Okay, hello everyone. I'm here with an sort of an internet friend of mine, Michael Tsarion. We have been in contact for quite some time. Hello, Michael.
Hey, Jocke, how's it going, mate?
Well, life is going. It's going quite good. I've been working on some stuff here on YouTube, and
Right.
trying to work off, from the Box Saga lens, but to branch it off a little bit, which can be a little bit controversial within the from the original. It's so you have to be so careful with the subject. So uh, this uh, what you call a more very slow approach, I think.
Yeah, which is good. It's good to do it slowly because there's a lot of information.
Yeah, well, it's so much information. You can spend a lifetime just on that subject, but I feel that
That's right.
the group that has been working on it has done such immense job on it, and it's no
Yeah.
use to like invent the wheel once again.
No, they've done amazing work. I mean, I've got 14 different websites on different subjects precisely because it's so hard to do justice and you have to do it slowly and, make sure people are focused on just one subject as
Hmm.
opposed to one website with 15 or, different subjects all crammed into it. So I chose early on to do it in this more separate way.
Hmm. Yeah, you seem to be very methodical in sort of trying to put the subjects into categories.
Yeah.
This is where I really lack. I'm all over the place.
Me too. I had to learn it.
Mm.
I had to redesign sites many times, and then some people stole my websites. The people who are actually the hosts. So I've
Oh.
had to rebuild many times websites and deal with these hosts who don't like your content. Same today, like on social media, they don't like your content. Then that's it. You're finished. You're shadow banned. You're deplatformed. I even had that before social media. I had that with hosts of websites. Can you believe it?
Hmm. But how long have you been working on like trying to get the information out? And it's really early, right, Michael?
Well, yeah, before Google Video.
Yeah.
It was some people put some videos up on the Google Video very early on, um, almost before anybody else. Maybe some very early Jordan Maxwell videos,
Mm.
but before David Icke, like maybe months or even maybe 6 months. So, because I was in Sweden one time in 2000, and I didn't anybody we met in Göteborg or in Stockholm didn't even have internet. They didn't have the equipment. They didn't go online, and it was unbelievable. And from that time, exactly that time, my first website went up in 2000, and I remember visiting Sweden for the first time then, and nobody was online. I had to get a little part, so I was going around all the shops. I mean, everywhere, Hisingen, you name it. We had to go far and wide, and to find this one part that would connect to the internet, and it was almost like nobody except people maybe in business. Some of these, business types had that connection, but householders did not. Same in Britain. So from very early on, yeah, my first website went up around about 98,
Mm.
but it was very slow because I had no money. So people were doing it for free. And then when they're doing it for free, you can't be pushing those people, and they're doing it when they have full-time jobs. So just to get even the site to look even half decent was 2 years. It took probably till 2000 before it even started to look even presentable. And then I had to do a lot of work through the years to add information and make it a little bit better.
Mm.
No, with no plan, of course, no idea.
No, you
I was just
started.
doing it,
Yeah, but you must
without
have
plan.
been very alone in this kind of pursuit? I mean, where do you remember where it all started with the like the pursuit that you have been? Because it,
Yeah, well, that started back in about 1979 to like 1980, which was a kind of a busy time in one way, because it was the first time I was going to America. I was, young, and when I got to America, you have more access to books than you would have had in Ireland at that time. So it seemed a little bit busy because you're getting exposed, and so to new things. And being away from Ireland, I was very homesick. It was
mhm,
culture shock, and so I started to read only things on Ireland. This is in California, which I didn't really like it there, or more, I liked it, but I didn't like the people. So then I would go to bookstores and started to think about Ireland, and there was radio stations in San Francisco that were very much based in Irish music and even some interesting sci-fi. So I would just tune out, check out, of the world around me and and I got into Celtic mythology, which had happened just about a couple of months before I left Ireland. I got into Celtic mythology through a great artist called Jim Fitzpatrick. He's also the designer of most of the Thin Lizzy covers, the metal band Thin Lizzy. He's still going. You can go to his Facebook page, Jim Fitzpatrick, brilliant artist. He had written 2 books on Irish mythology, and I just got started reading those when this move to America took place. So when I got to America, I bought some more books on that subject. And that's it. That's basically the beginning of a true intellectual interest. Yes, in my own country, but then that quickly broadened out
mm,
to, more interest. And then another subject I was studying at the same time, very different, was symbolism in advertising, based in some things I had read in a magazine. And it made me obsessed. And so 2 years later, when we came back to Europe, to the UK, I was telling all the people at the time, these are associates, about subversive symbolism, about occult symbolism, and about subliminal advertising. No response. Total, nobody could give a shit, right? So I just kept studying it, collecting magazines. It was so that it was lonely, yes.
mm,
And all the way up to now, it's been a lonely journey. There's been no help for the most part. Unslaved is a collaboration.
mm.
David deals with the technical side, but the content is mostly mine, and therefore, again, yeah, it's not that there hasn't been some help, but it's been mostly a solo, journey all the way. Designed all my own sites from the beginning, and got the original designer to show me how to work, front page and a little bit of Photoshop, and it's a very, very slow process where people will show you things, mostly not want to do that. But then I slowly over the years learned a little bit of editing, and it's been a tremendously difficult, journey all the way through.
Yeah, I can imagine you have like all the odds against you almost because this is not
Yeah,
the much appreciated kind of study, that you gain a lot of money in. I mean, you can use the knowledge of symbolism and etymology to work, in the wrong way or the dark side, so to speak. But
yeah, you're right. Yeah,
yeah,
actually, this is, of course, a way to make money is to go down there, but I've never done that. I let also see. I don't advertise. I just did my own thing, my own way. I never get involved with Coast to Coast or Jeff Rance or any of the big. You know, I didn't sell out to any of these original, like Ancient Aliens or what's that other one, the History Channel. I've been called by these people, Gaia. I mean, 5 times last year, Gaia called me. Russell Brand has called me. I can give you a long list. And I was in Sweden once on Österhamngatan when I got a phone call from History Channel. A guy left a message, wanted me to call back. I never called him back. So I have turned them more things down because of integrity. Architects of Control, which was filmed in Gothenburg. People wanted to pick that up, and hey, yeah, we'll give you 80, we'll give you 20, we'll take 80. I just turned them down. So there's never been any funding. Everything I do is on my own shoestring. Now we got members on Enslaved that help,
hmm,
but it's always been that. I've never gone out to advertise, and that's been the difficulty then, because you don't get crowdfunding. You don't get any kind of income at all. And then back in 2000, and I think it was almost as early as 2005, a lot of internet pirating took place, with Pirate Bay
Yeah.
and lots of other torrenting and all of that. So even if you made a product, it didn't sell because everybody just got it for free. So then that makes the journey longer. I'm still going to produce my things, but now where things could have been done in months, they take years because you didn't get the income from the first product to create the second product. And this is not Big Brother. These are people. These are people who should be helping you or ripping you off like you can't believe. And therefore your own work that is meant to help them is retarded. Nice one. You have to learn all of this stuff as well. So yeah, I'm no fan of the audience. I'm no fan of the people out there. I do my work for truth, not for the human race.
I can imagine there's a lot of passion there also. I can sort of relate. I do everything for free also. I have no money within this at all. It's just, yeah, I think that's a good way to start at least. Or it's the only genuine way, I think. Otherwise,
oh yeah,
you're gonna
there's
get
many sellouts.
Yeah, there's only sellouts, I would say almost.
Yeah, well, almost all. I agree with you there, and it's very, very difficult. I have wanted to give up more than I've ever wanted to stay involved in what I'm doing, and it really is then panning for gold in the cold and wet and the rain and the sleet and the snow, and just panning for a few things of gold and keep on doing it for oneself, because the knowledge is so important. What you're getting out of it is where the gold is, not in anybody's appreciation or support. It's unbelievable. You only need to look at the response of social media where you're banned. You get maybe 2 likes on a video or 1 share, and that's considered, celebrate. I got 1.5 shares of work that has taken me my whole life, work that is so priceless that it defies. And then over there in the corner, somebody's selling some rubbish, and it's got 1 million hits. So it's funny. I just laugh at it. So it's because it's their fucking loss, not mine.
Yeah. It sort of end up becoming that you do it for your own sake. I can
I've always done it.
Yeah, I can really relate to it. I'm a musician, and I have projects or maybe 50 songs recorded, but I don't give a fuck about releasing them. I can sort of rehearsal for myself with it, but why should I put it out there anyway?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's the same kind of thing with this. Almost.
Well, and even, it's like there's never going to be. See, Ayn Rand, the great philosopher, she said that you can never, ever pay the hero man, even if you gave him millions, it's still not enough. And so at 14, 15, that was my understanding that Howard Rourke, her heroic character, what that man gives, what genius gives, can never be paid by any human being, any millionaire. It's not enough. And I agree with that. And I've had that since a teenager philosophy. And it's not just some trivial, it's a tattoo. It's like, that's it. So I never expect to get anything, in return for what I give out. It's just the way it is. And you have to really honor that. Yeah. And the wisdom and the knowledge, and carry on with that in your mind and not be looking to anybody else.
It's like the unslaved slogan, "Truth against the world." It's
yeah, of course, that's the old Druid. That's the old Druid statement from thousands of years ago, and it couldn't be better, because you are against the world, and a lot of people in the beginning don't feel that, and I've been, pushed back. Hey, man, what does that mean? Truth against the world? What are you talking about? It's me. Well, how can I explain it to you, airhead? You give it a couple more years, do what you're doing. See, remember, since 9/11 and now since the COVID. Conspiracy's been proven 100% by even, the ordinary guy at the bus stop, the ordinary taxi driver, the ordinary, worker now knows that's it. All those crazy guys with the tinfoil hats, they're all proven right. So there's your success, in holding to a thing long enough. And now they have to lower their eyes. They've got to look at you and going, you've been doing this work for how many years? How did you know? Or, how did you stick through all of the naysaying? How do you go from one country to the other and never get to talk about what you do or meet all of these friends of a day or associates? What do you do, Michael? Oh, I'm just a musician. That's lonely. That's like, you can't talk to anybody. You can't talk over the counter, or you can't talk at a business, or you can't talk where you work, at what you do.
No. This is very private for me also. I don't talk about this at work at all.
Yeah.
That's the way. I don't know. It's so private in that sense, especially when it comes to like the box saga, for example. I mean, that's is just way, way beyond in the how do you even present stuff like that. That's why I've been trying to do what I do, to try to dance around the subject and to show the connections that you can find around it. So you sort of go from the outside and draw them in if they are interested.
If they're interested. Now that's
Mm.
different. So back in the 80s, I stopped talking to people because for a few years I did do publicly, talk to friends about this subject. It was crickets, it was very superficial interest.
Mm.
And so I stopped. And then I never made that mistake again. And I even still regret making the mistake. This is from about 1983 to 1986. After that, because of the bad responses, I stopped, and then would only speak to very, very intimate friends, who could share. But outside of that, no. And then that is one of the big reasons I did like to use the internet, because
Mm.
my alternative to talking to people in my home area later became, when the internet got created, I could see immediately a connection that this is the platform to do it on globally, where you're not seeing people eye to eye, you're not shaking their hand, you're not convincing anybody. I'm just talking to this computer. I'm just putting stuff up, on the computer. This is brilliant. There's no human beings involved. Only later on, after about 2001 or 2, I started getting feedback on what was on these websites, because I had this disconnect that if you put things on websites, nobody's watching, nobody's looking. Of course, the truth is the whole world is looking. There's people in Sweden, Finland, Croatia, Japan, checking out your stuff. But that never entered my mind until many years after I'd gone public.
Mm.
And, you get people also sending you information. And I'm going, Jesus, this person read my website and is sending me, further information that they know. Whoa, so then slowly I got a little bit more open
Mm.
to communicating, with the email and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember I sent you an email when I was really like stuck because I heard a really early program you did on like I think it was about Irish mythology or Irish about Ireland, and you sort
Yeah.
of promoted that you should look in your own backyard, like for a concept, look at it in your own country and your own
Yeah.
town and all of this, and I started to do that, and oh my God, I mean,
I know.
in my eyes, the Finland and Sweden and this is just we have been taught that it's just this little country, with no particular influence, or it's just this nice little country, but when you really started to look into what has been happening and the history here, it's just insane what you find.
Oh, Gotland, even the Finns, these people have no idea of the the box saga is particularly good because it focuses on language.
Mm.
When you talk about Irish mythology, nobody's usually thinking about Gaelic language or Celtic language. Of course, it's very deep. But in Finland, in the box saga, yeah, language is central.
Mm.
It's a good jumping off place. Well, that's very rare. You don't get that. I mean, maybe Sanskrit, but I think Finland is distinctive because language plays such a role. The primal sounds and all of
Yeah.
that. That's unique.
It's a really good foundation to work from, and it's so uncorrupted when it comes from the horse's mouth straight, like with Eeyore Bach, and it's so fresh and uncorrupted.
That's right.
It's genius what they have been planning because Eeyore was planned like 1,000 years before he was even born.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's really interesting that internet came in at the same time as Eeyore told the story also. Sort of
In
one,
in
yeah.
1985, I told you about the two predecessor interests that I had: Irish mythology and symbolism. In 1985, and this is a very short time after, the towering interest of a day, every day, was etymology.
Mm.
Yeah, it happened through a gentleman I knew who was a master etymologist, a guy called David Singer. He worked for Fillmore West. It's a like these are very high level art, uh, graphic arts people who work for the music industry. You know, people like
Mm.
Bill Graham. So this guy's a legendary poster artist, right? But in his private life, he's an absolute monster genius with sacred geometry and etymology. So I'm very young and I'm under his influence, and he starts teaching me about my name, the things that you never even knew existed as any kind of subject matter. And he lived in San Francisco at the time, and this man was a total and utter sage and a genius. So, but then he wrote down the name of several books on a piece of paper, which I kept, and I took it back to Ireland with me. And of course, you couldn't get those books in Ireland, not even a chance, But I got one or two others that were like those books on words. But I couldn't really use it until about 1980. Uh, the second journey was at this period in the 80s. About 82, we went back. So 82, 83, then I came back to America, San Francisco Bay Area, and I was now able to get these actual books. And I was able to get hold of a very big dictionary, Webster's etymological dictionary, one of the best that you could ever find, through this man's recommendation. He had one and I got it. And so every single day I would just study it from morning to night. And this is when I discovered that the English language, the debt that it pays to Old High German, one of the great proto languages, and it had a lot of Nordic meanings, and I loved this. I became so obsessed with it that I became a bore, because it was all I was ever talking about to people. And that so when I later found out the Bach saga and I'm doing even things now with
Yeah, but you were so
language a
early
bit
with
more.
it. I knew that you pointed me in that direction even. And at that time it wasn't even a big thing, you know. It sort of blew
No,
up with Jim.
that's right. Yeah, I really didn't know that much, but what I did know was fascinating. And this is one of my first studies. So every time I come back to it, like I'm now, I look at it as very auspicious, because it's where I started actually,
Mm.
and it was obsessive interest, not learning languages. That wasn't the thing. It was learning the meaning of words and the philology, and of course that now has come back into my work on philosophy. Because the manipulation of words is a big part of the materialism. Postmodernism, which hates the West, has
Mm.
has levied a tax on language and words. And so, back full circle, trying to expose their lies and their fallacy has taken me back to the root meanings of words and stuff like that. So I just look at that as absolutely amazing, that was put on the shelf for a while. I couldn't pursue that interest in those days for very long, had to do other things. And then, every time I've come back to language and words, it's always been at a most appropriate time. And I look at that as being like almost going back in time. It's very, very strange feeling and a good feeling.
But it's a really, you can see today, especially in the social climate in Sweden, how they weaponize words and those
Right.
talismanic words, and and I'm very curious about those things, and to even questionize, to put that into question and perspective can be really discomfortable for for people, Uh,
Well,
the study of words in itself is a very foreign concept, I think, for a lot of
it is.
people. Yeah.
It really is. It really is. And also, as you say, that it has this other sort of talismanic, iconic. Now, I did an article to introduce that to people who don't know anything about it. It's called The Age of Idolatry. They can get it on the Michael Tsarion website, msar.com. Age of Idolatry. It's under the articles. And that might introduce this concept if people have never heard it before, because you're quite right. It's still something that hasn't been given anything like you know, uh, the sort of attention that it deserves.
Mm. Well, it's so foreign for people, And even like in Sweden, we are surrounded by a lot of words that still has the heathen roots, that we still use. And to just shift the perspective on some words, then they go like, aha, oh, I didn't know that. It's there, right in front of them, but they never really see the concept if you just explain it for them, because it's in the word and they can understand it. If you speak Swedish, it's so
That's
loaded.
right. Yeah.
It's so loaded. For example,
Yeah.
the simple word history in the English, like it's his story. It's for the male. That simple thing.
Yeah.
It's very very interesting. But you said that you have been living in Sweden. Is there a particular reason why you went to Sweden?
Oh yeah. I've always loved, because my interest in the Irish mythology. Uh, I'm a big fan of J.R.R. Tolkien,
Mm.
of Kai Nielsen, the artist. So and I've always had an interest since back in the almost 70s. So then I got a chance to go visit just as a short holiday in 2000. Got to visit there and make a few friends, and I liked it. I liked Gothenburg. I loved Stockholm.
Mm.
And so yeah, it felt right to just go back several times and visit and all of that. So I didn't quite get to learn the language, but yeah, the word roots is very important, and travel around there as much as I can. See, my ancestors are from Norway
Okay.
anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They. You can clearly hear how close the Norwegian and the Swedish are.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's.
And I still
Yeah.
want to go to Norway more. I think Bergen and places like that. But yeah, my ancestors came from there in about the ninth. They came over to England in the 13th century, probably as Vikings. They were
Mm.
fighting for Olaf the First back in the ninth century, and then they invaded. Obviously, must have come over to England as kind of invaders or whatever. I've got like they had a coat of arms,
Oh,
uh, so you can easily track them, in
I
a
see.
genealogy, and then like so many other families, they must have lost a lot by the 1700s, and that's when some of these people moved over to Ireland for some reason. We don't know really.
1700s. Oh.
We don't know if it was a man. We don't know if it was a woman, but the Irish connection. They went up north, and so they were Norwegians, and they moved into Ireland, went up north, and then we have several family names, derivative names, that we can check. So that's that line. And my father was a very, like 6 foot, blonde, blue-eyed, big boned. You
Mm.
couldn't tell the difference between him and some Norwegian fisherman, type of. And all his fathers were the same look.
Mm. Well, that's
So I always had this hankering. And then with the fantasy side, the Tolkien, the legends, the Kalevala,
yeah.
all of this fascinated me. Kai Nielsen's artwork, I was really fascinated with that. And every time I saw Viking artifacts, especially Viking jewelry or Viking pots, their silver work, any
Amazing.
movies on the Vikings, it was really like, whoa, who are these people? And of course, all the lies that were told in England about them. I kind of knew to keep that in mind, that one day these lies will be overthrown. And I'm sure they are. They have been overthrown. They know that the whole story of the Vikings in Ireland and England has been largely falsified.
Yeah,
Uh,
and you can see they are rolling out even harder on the lie
yeah,
with the Viking shows and all the different kind of Norse
yeah,
shows. I am allergic to those fucking
yeah. I
shows.
hate them as well.
Yeah, because I get
Just nothing but lies. They
yeah.
don't want people awakening. They know that in the underground, people are getting into the Bok Saga. They're getting into the real lore of the area, the
Mm.
Goths. They can't. The whole story of how Goths came into the Roman Empire is all lies. So I mean, it's really deep. It's really, really deep. I've got the works that show that those lies, but then how I'm still waiting on Slave to get. There's so many things on the conveyor belt to get to, and some you just have to shelve for another 5 years. But I'm just hoping that members will stick around and wait for it, because you wouldn't believe I've got work on South Africa to get into. I've got work on the story of the Goths in relation to the Roman Empire, and I've got tons of work on the Ottoman Empire, the Turkish Empire,
Mm.
and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, all the fall. And I've had all of this piling up, keep methodically doing it. But I've got 2 new books coming out, so I'm trying to prioritize those. They're on philosophy right now. So there's certain things get in the way, and you just have to park the other stuff, and just hope that your viewers will have the patience. But it's all A1 stuff. I mean, this is going back to old chronicles and texts, but it's also the best of the up-to-date works that are being written right now by great men, on socialism, on fascism, on these empires. So I'm incorporating old stuff that's long forgotten, that's masterly work that they don't want you to know about, and I make sure it's up to date with the latest works of great authors, and I try to put a book list
Mm.
every now and again on Unslaved, so people can see some of the books, not all, that I've read on these subjects. And one day that these are going to be in presentations that will be second to none, but they're on their way.
I think you're doing a really good job with like bringing forth. So you don't need to do all the research. You bring forth the all stuff that is has already been made, and you sort of
Yeah,
compromise it into one sort of pillar. And I really appreciate that, because I wouldn't be where I am or what I know today without your work, Michael. So a really
thank
big
you.
thank you. I mean, it's just incredible.
Well, it's so much work, and it's very sad to see that years. Well, this is the story of my life anyway. Recently, things have actually been better. I don't have to wait 5 years, but still, there's a bit of a creeping wait, not as long as it used to be. That was the biggest problem in my career. If somebody said, "What's the biggest problem you've had in your career?" Well, one of them is this problem, that I've had an idea back in the 80s and it's had to wait 10, 12. There's things I do in female psychology, for instance.
Mm.
You could say that those almost, well, I can give you exact dates. I studied this stuff in 1989. So just you can work out how long it's taken to even do the first website on that, or maybe the first interview on that. And other projects have been similar to that. And there's still stuff on the shelf that I haven't had time to get into. So I just have to forget about worrying about it and just say, there's nothing I can do about this. So just keep studying it, keep making notes, and one day it'll be presented. But try to organize things so that the most important things coming out sooner. And
Mm.
that's what I've done. And so, I've been fairly happy with that. It's mostly that has come true. And so it takes away the bite. It takes away the worry of saying, oh my God, this is just taking so long. Again, 30 years of that. But now it's not, because of members, because of a little bit more interest
Mm.
in these works, and again, other social things that are happening has made it a lot easier in that sense. But yeah, I can't tell you how many fantastic things we got in the pipeline.
Oh, that's nice to hear. I was gonna ask you, the old town, especially in Stockholm, is drenched with this symbolism, for example. Is this something you recognize at this stage when you were living there?
Oh yeah, it's in Gamla
Yeah.
Stan, and also Risen. Yeah, that whole area is filled with obvious, you know, symbolism. It could be a little bit later, like 1800s or whatever, 19th century.
Mm.
But when you see these crowns, the 3 crowns, or when you see the horse and the unicorn and various other symbolism, it's part of some of it. Some of it. Remember, the stuff that actually interested me mostly was the secret society.
Mm.
Symbolism saying Gothenburg, right? Norra Gatan. You've got near Brunnsparken. You've got the Knights of Templars
Yeah.
uh, building, and of course it's number 33. Just has to be number 33, Norra Gatan, right? Yeah, they don't miss a beat. Or you've got the Odd Fellows, and this is then how and there's a big double-headed eagle,
Yeah.
and so same in Stockholm. You've got this, and you've got lots of these bizarre Swedish, even secret societies that are not known to the rest of the world. So
Yeah.
this was what fascinated me, and of course Swedish society is very stratified. You get the ordinary, ignoramuses down below, and then you've got this elite class. They claim to be socialistic and communitarian, but of course there's a big glass ceiling between those who are really in high positions
Yeah.
in banking and corporations and charity, and then the rest of the, the people below who are just completely oblivious. They think they're living in a perfect socialistic utopia and helping everybody else in the world and all this nonsense.
Well,
And then you've got
so it turns out that the Sweden is like built on Templarism, that pyramid structure. Uh, you can
yeah,
see all the Vasa kings were High Templars. I think they
yeah,
even were the Templars, or the you. It's very easy to say Templars, but like the upper echelon, because it's really interesting. I'm working on a documentary on this that really exposed them for a
oh,
while. Yeah, it's about the power shift when the Vasa was taken out, where by a nefarious group, and because of Sweden or Stockholm is so small, especially during that time, we can really easy trace the actors and who did what and all of this. But it's a really interesting subject that I've been working on for the last couple of months. But it has
well,
always been in like the back burner for a while. But I have not been ready to present it.
oh, people need to hear it. This
Yeah,
is such an important project you're working on, and the Wallenstam, these would represent
Wallenberg.
the Wallenbergs, and then you
Mm.
have the Chalmers, right?
Yeah, but because of the power sphere is so small, it's very easy to study them, and you can see that the actors behind the assassination of the Vasa family is the Wallenbergs and others.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
it's really easy to see, and they of course took care of the banking and the creation of money, and they are still in the power today. So they have been having that kind of seat and built a dynasty from that.
Yes, and other assassinations. I think the Jesuits were behind the killing of Olaf Palme, things like that.
Yeah, probably. It's
You
a
know,
yeah, but
there's a lot of interesting connections.
the interesting thing is that I go from the 1500s, where the Vasa took power, and try to trace it through but it has been leading up to today's situation, so I can see the the storyline from the Vasa dynasty and what they created, which was built on this more pagan, because Gustav Adolf II, for example, he came with this military system, for example, that is purely based on the pagan military system, and taking knowledge from before, from paganism, and sort of making a mixed version and using that knowledge to build and create society from, but in a more modern tweak, so to speak. So
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
very interesting subject to study, I can
Well,
tell.
near the statue in Oosterham, it's on the Avenue, Avenue, right in Gothenburg. They
Mm.
have a statue of Wallenberg, and there's some very interesting eagle and a big ball, and some very, very weird symbolism in that area around
Oh,
that statue.
I need to check that out. I need to
Yeah,
go. I have
yeah,
been in.
Avenue.
Yeah. The interesting thing about the architecture in Stockholm is that they put history into monuments and sculpture, into the facade or the architecture there.
Yeah,
So you can work as a
yeah.
guide there if you know about the history and symbolism. You can go
Oh,
around
yeah,
and just give a tour for a couple of hours really easily. So it's such
yeah,
a
yeah,
built in such a nice way in that sense.
yeah, yeah. That's right. In in the center where they have the government buildings.
Mm,
That's really beautiful there. And the central castle and everything.
yeah.
Uh, this is really, yeah, just stone's throw away from Gamla Stan. It's
Yeah.
really, really nice.
Everything is so compressed down there, and it's so interesting to see because I traced this up to today, so it becomes very interesting. I even called out, this infrastructure sabotage with the North Stream there that was happened not so long time ago, like last week. Uh, like
Hmm.
a couple of weeks before, I said I predicted that there was gonna happen some kind of shift within the infrastructure when it comes to energy and or and internet, something in between there, because they are the key on they are like the guys behind all the pipelines and the infrastructures that you can see with the power lines, the Ericsson company, ABB, and all those
Is that
actors.
right?
Yeah, you can see that they have 43% of the infrastructure in the world when it comes to telecom, and they have been
Mm,
Ericsson is 160 years old. They were the first with power lines in Sweden and such.
really?
Yeah, so it's such an immense study, and you almost drop your cheek when you understand that the power that is sort of residing from Stockholm, with the central bank there and all this, it has ties to the 1600s with the Vasa family, in the 30 Years' Wars
Oh,
and all of this. So you can see everything seems to be tied to Stockholm. It's
yeah.
immense.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And if you go up to, Prince Eugene's estate in Stockholm as well, it's very interesting symbolism there. Very a lot of astrological, astrotheological symbolism.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is just.
Sure. It just shows you that these elites there, the royal people, was very familiar with
Yeah, but
occult symbolism.
look at SCA, for example, which they had the old Norse symbolism within their companies, and
Oh, yeah,
they're using all of this old Norse symbolism,
definitely.
and they know how to work with it.
Yeah,
So
they do. Yeah.
it's very interesting, this subject, or the study of Sweden, because the Wallenberg motto is to att syna eller att verka utan att synas, which means to act without being noticed. That is their family motto.
And that's a Fabian, right? The sheep and wolves clothing, same symbolism.
Yeah, I've been trying to trace them. They have some Jewish background,
Yeah, yeah,
actually.
yeah. Yeah, but they're not Jewish. They're Sabbatean. This is a different thing.
They were called some kind of they. I think they are connected with the Rothschilds and those kind of Jews.
Yeah, that's right. These are all Sabbatean families. They're not Jews. They're Satanists who hide behind Judaism.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a. I'm gonna I'm gonna try to do as much of honor as I can to the subject, but I think it's new information that there's a lot of books has been written on the Wallenbergs and this kind of power structure that Sweden resides, but it's all in Swedish. So
Yeah.
I wanted to sort of present it for the like Americans and the in English format.
Phew, that would be absolutely brilliant
Yeah.
project.
So I'm not inventing the wheel here. There are very promising character from Sweden that has been doing obsessive work on this for a reason. So it's just sad that they have mostly in Swedish, or like almost 100% in Swedish. So.
Sure. Yeah, this is a very important role in life. I do it too, is to
Mm.
take, unknown person or somebody who slipped away, used to be famous, but they're not famous now. And I try to get their work back. And sometimes it means retranslating it into a more of a modern idiom.
Mm.
Yeah, this can happen because even just in a few years, the language that somebody's written something in can be obscure to people. And, it's up to somebody else to come in to, when I was in Sweden, remember, I had the fortune of meeting with Yuri Lina.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
He's a
nice.
friend. And we talked, and he was having that difficulty. So he had this translator, who was working for him because he had been access to KGB records,
Mm.
and it was all in Russian, right? So he had to translate from the Russian into Swedish, and then somebody had to take it from Swedish and turn it into English. So this often happens.
Yeah, and to make it in like that format that he has, I have his book, this In the Sign of Scorpio, which is a really masterpiece, I think.
Yes, of course. See, and we talked about that. He came to a house. I was staying with a man, you see, who had got the first occult conspiracy bookstore in Stockholm, and he had to close it. He had to close it down because the Swedish media kept sending these idiots with microphones and making fun and putting it on the headlines. And he is the first man to host David Icke in Sweden
Oh.
as well. So yeah, so I knew him, and he told me the funny stories about the media with secret microphones and look what got here, secretly filming the bookstore, and he just got fed up with it, and he didn't need it, so he closed it. But it was kind of funny, and he told me about how Sweden is so backward, but
Mm.
he also had some inside scoop on the Wallenbergs and the Chalmers and a lot of good stuff about history.
Mm. Well, it's a perfect country to examine because it's so small, like I said, and it's easy to track. And but the result of the what you find is so you can't almost believe what you're finding because it's in your face. If you go into the Wallenbergs.com, they show it all to you. I mean, if you
Yeah.
just look at their website, they tell you everything. It's it's even a three-part documentary on the SVT, so the nation, what do you call it? The public service channel we have, the Swedish
Yeah.
television. They have a three-part documentary on the Wallenbergs. It's basically the Sweden's modern history. I mean,
Yes. This is what I also found out when I was studying the Rothschilds and the Warburgs. Even the official biographies tell you nothing about, tell you, all they tell you is about the crime of the family
yeah,
and their glory. They love to tell you about how they destroyed a stock exchange, how they made money from crimes and destroying other companies. Lady Rothschild signed off on one of the books, gave approval to a book that is actually tells you all about their banking crimes and everything. It's so funny.
yeah, and people call you a fucking conspiracy theorist
I know.
when it comes from the horse's mouth itself. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just
Now this is one
unbelievable.
of the reasons. That's right. And that's one of the reasons that I only specialize in those official biographies.
Mm.
And when I bring up quotes, then I got accused for that. First, it was like, Michael, you have no sources. Then when I bring in the sources, I get accused for even putting in the sources. Yeah, because it's rubbing your own shit in your face when I show you from official sources and official biographies or from top generals or from top statesmen all these things about the Club of Rome and the Illuminati and all of this stuff. From dukes and princes are saying it in their writings. Watch out. So this doesn't make you many friends,
No.
but I love doing it because I never get then any feedback. Nobody comes after me. They have to pretend it didn't exist.
But Michael, a little bit off topic, but you're also into like music, like metal or hard rock music and all of this, because I come from that background, and it's sort of an attitude there that you don't give a fuck about approval. You don't give, certain approval, of course, that are respected from your side, but it that's my attitude, and it sort of has been lingering into this also. It's it's sort of a, I don't know how to call it. It's very this Viking image that they show on like the television for sure. I hate the show, but this kind of integrity and
Oh
fierce,
yeah,
that
yeah.
that's
Well,
a
the bands I like to listen to are the ones who have integrity. And
mm,
I've met Leif Edling, from Candlemass and Messiah McCollin. I've met some of these guys, and I know they're true. And so, generally speaking, their message is really good. I like the bands with the occult message or whatever.
mm,
And we had a really great talk with the guys from Candlemass about the Rig Veda and the Indian Upanishads that they're drawing upon in their lyrics, and also many Swedish poets that are not remembered anymore, not just Bellman and the famous ones, but others.
mm,
He's drawing on this. So this is what I love. I love poetry being put to music. And I like the heavy music because if Beethoven or Handel was living today, they'd be into heavy metal. That passion, that intensity. And
yeah,
then, as you say, oh, yeah, the idea of being an outsider,
yeah,
of trying to find an image that, Ronnie James Dio once said that it's not evil music, it's medieval music. And he was so right. And he said, and it's about chivalry, and it's about, man being man and heroic and standing up to evil and pushing back at it, not letting evil run the world and all of this. So, this kind of thing really, yeah. And also from a musical point of view, always interested me, the complexity. People often don't realize that heavy metal first, that kind of rock is quite difficult to play and all of that. So
Mm.
yeah, and especially bass guitar. That's why I started with his bass. Uh, you know, looking at people like Geddy Lee and trying to, you know, see these heroes and try to play like them and what have you. So, but yeah, that's a very big part of my life because it gives you the strength to carry on. Just when you feel down and you feel like, okay, this is, over, it's not worth it. There's something about metal music that it encourages you.
Yeah.
It sort of encourages you and keeps you enthusiastic about what you're doing.
Yeah, I can very much relate. I come from the more electronical side when I was younger, but I sort of graduated towards the more. I skipped the rock era
Hmm.
totally and went straight into Amon Amarth and this kind of more death metal, melodeath.
Yeah, yeah, the extreme metal. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
so it was
Oh
a
yeah,
lot
yeah.
about the image, with my friends also. Trump, also, they had so much integrity. I felt with this when I started at the gymnasium, or what you call it, the high school or whatever. I mean, I met friends who were into metal, and they had so much integrity. Those people, and I was sort of that was a really I gravitated towards that, with it sort of gave them the integrity also to be an
Yeah,
outsider.
yeah, yeah. I didn't have too many. There was people in Belfast, of course, but because of the violence and the troubles with the bombing, bands didn't come there, and so they were too scared. There are exceptions, but vast majority of bands would not go there. They go to Dublin, which for us was a long journey, and we didn't really want to go there. So you're missing out a lot, and I think that helps because then when a band says "fuck it, we're going," like Metallica, you're like, what? Or Manowar, they're like they're coming here? No way, you know. And so you're like you become very passionate about these guys because they have their guts,
Mm.
and you had rock bands and you had all sorts of different, there were a few now and again that seemed to not care about the dangers and were very happy to be there, and that you could see that they were happy to be there on stage. So these wet rainy nights in the winter, and there'd be a band that would come there, you really, from Germany or wherever, and you'd really just couldn't believe it, because there was a tremendous embargo and a great fear. So but it wasn't that got me into that kind of music. I got into the artwork.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, funny enough, album cover artwork, and
the
you can get
Dio.
big.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And you can get big coffee table books, which I had in America, on artwork. And I would study meticulously the artwork. I'm not a good artist, but I love looking at art. And so these art covers, I noticed that in rock and heavy metal, they seem to be even more captivating and interesting, like physical graffiti or, uh, Wishbone Ash covers, uh, Candlemass covers, Candlemass even used covers from, classical art. I mean, from, Thomas Cole, Thomas Church, really, really special art. And I love that idea. And then if I saw an album cover that I liked, I'd want to hear the music.
Yeah.
So it's 50. Usually you listen to it, it's absolute rubbish. It has nothing to do with the cover. But then there's that other 50% that does, resonate, that it was picked carefully. The artwork was done with great, care, and it does fit the music. There's so many examples like that. And then, yeah, wow, that kicks ass, So it was mostly through the artwork, and then slowly went into more extreme. And then, see, during the 80s, the music was so soft and
Mm.
so hair bands from LA, this kind of crap, that then I got into the extreme music like Venom, Bathory, and King Diamond, and Merciful Fate, and other bands that are heavier, because as a contradiction to the shit that was, these Motley Crues and this fucking Poison and all that rubbish, Cinderella and all this crap, that just junk,
I
and
tend
so
to
I got
agree.
more. As soon as I heard the heavier stuff, friends would play the heavier stuff. I was like, what the fuck is this, right? And I really like that more, and that kind of put us a little bit different in Belfast because there was only a small group of people who were into that more extreme music.
Mm. Well, I sort of just think about this Dio album cover of the whole where the whole diver is,
Yeah,
swimming from the devil there. Uh, I remember my mother brought this tape CD, and it's the first song that I really remember, as a child, because
Your mother listened to music like that?
yeah, she had this album, and I wanted her to put this on because I was so captivated by the artwork, So I can really, but I this is the first song I really remember as a child.
Did you feel that the artwork captivated the
Yes,
music?
I was like mimicking this whole diver swimming on the floor, getting away
Oh my
from
God.
the chains.
Yeah, because that visual does have a big effect.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I can tell you, I mean, for me, even if it was a very basic album cover, it didn't matter. Something about the aesthetics would very much, now there's a couple of shops in town because, we were on the dole, I had no money, right? So you just can't go buy an album because you like the album cover. But there were some shops in the 80s that would put the album on for you. So at least you could hear one song, or, if it wasn't busy. So if you go down there and it wasn't busy, and I got thrown out of all the shops in Belfast, all the pubs, all the record shops, because I'd be constantly fighting with people.
Oh.
In those days, I was a very kind of different person. And but this one place I went in, see a Candlemass album. Oh, they got a new album out or whatever, or Onslaught or whatever. And if they put it on, then you could go whoa. And then I had a cousin who had more money, and he would get like Death Angel, or he'd come up with like he would be able to buy more albums than I could. So I learned his technique of just going and getting the person in the shop to stick it on. And if you got very lucky, you'd find a shop that would do that. But within 1 year, I was already banned from pretty much every shop in Belfast. So it was, couldn't go in, because if you go into the pubs in those days, they wanted you to drink. But if you brought something in from the outside, like a Coke or whatever, they would, get into a fight, or they try to confront you about drinking
Hmm.
inside. And anything that ever happened like that, I would just go ballistic.
Oh.
I learned later on to just calm down. So then the next thing you know is the bouncers are throwing you out. So after 1 year, I'm already out of every single shop for breaking their rules or causing a fight, or just telling them where to fuck off.
You're a rule breaker, Michael. I can
I
hear.
was like so much of a rule breaker. So I ended up being isolated. There was only one club I could go to, and I just always kept calm there. This one club that played all the bands that came to Belfast. If they weren't playing a big stadium, then they play one or this like small club. And so if you wanted to get in there, you had to be calm. you
Hmm.
know
But did you
so
have a lot
luckily,
of like underground scenes and
yeah,
this kind
big
of?
underground scene. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we had a place called the Labor Club. It was a kind of a communist club where local bands and British bands would play. Then there was a place called Rosetta Bar, where Creator and Death, everybody from all around the world, would come to
R-
play there, like a Monomarth, and
I'm on a
Sabbath.
Marv, yeah.
Yeah, they'd play this club, the Rosetta Bar.
I love them.
So there was, yeah, it was not as good, say, as London or anything, but yeah, we had a bit of a scene, and most of the bands were crap. You wouldn't go to watch them, right? But there was the odd one that stuck out, and then you had the big concert halls, where the Michael Shankers and
Mm.
you know uh, the bigger bands would come to play, like Exodus or even Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden, Kiss. You know, I'm not into Kiss, but I went anyway just so that I could save my life. And also, I was very, very depressed during that period, and I just wanted to get out of the house. So the whole town was going to see Kiss. It's like something in the Scandinavium, everybody's going, right? Or Ullevi. So I thought, okay, I'll just go. I'm not interested in the music, but I'll see some of my friends and just have a day out. So a lot of times I went to see bands that I didn't even care to see, but it was just to get out of the house. Such depressing times. And
Mm.
remember, I'm talking about times where there was the violence in the streets, the troubles, and so there wasn't much pickings. There was nothing to do really, and there was other problems as well, to stop me going to places, and it was very, very difficult. So when a big band came, sometimes you just spend the money just to get out of the house, even if you didn't really care for the band.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it's interesting. I got to think about we had a you know, a big underground scene when I sort of grew up in my 20s, here in Umeå where I live. But it sort of got totally killed when Umeå became like the cultural capital of Europe when we entered
No,
EU.
no.
They killed off the Kulturnatta, which was a night where all the bands could play all over town. You know, there was different stages all over, and
Yeah.
people could play and show their music. But all of this got killed the minute that Umeå got this status, so to speak. I think it's
See, this happened in England because of the terrible state of cities like Belfast, which is probably one of the worst for dilapidation and filth and dirt and corruption. But you also had this in Manchester and Liverpool, Sheffield. When all the new money came in to make it better, I think it made it worse, right? From an architectural point of view. But when all that money came in and they made these boardwalks and they made these new centers, that happened there as well. So all the extremely good, you know, new romantic bands and all of the sort of underground bands and even the metal bands, that was it. And also the protocol at the actual venues was bad, even for the bands. I've had people, you know, tell me, like Lemmy from Motorhead and other bands, that when they get to these venues, there's so many rules inside. Like, you know, hey, we're going to close up at 11. Get your shit off the stage into your trucks and fuck off, you know, this kind of thing. And they'll turn the lights off. The band is barely off the stage, going back to, you know, shower or whatever. And the fucking guys are knocking on the door going, we're closing. So, you know, all of this has been, you know, a problem. And then Ireland had a problem too, because if a band came, these promoters and agents would always purposely put bands together that were totally unlike each other. You get this at the famous Donington Rock Festival in England, where what do you call it, the lineup or the list of bands?
Yeah.
You know, see, because now it's better, right? If you go to Sweden Rock or Wacken,
Yeah.
or Bloodstock, there's a bit of, you know, collusion. The sound, sonically, they all sound like one genre. But in the 80s and 90s, all these dissimilar bands who should never have been on the same bill were put on the same bill by these promoters. So if you was into metal, you'd have to sit there and wait for 4 bands to get off the fucking stage, you know, before you saw something that was better, right? And in America, they kind of did that too. But closer towards the end of the 90s, that stopped, you know, and it was better. You could see, say, Morbid Angel, Pantera, and Black Sabbath on the same bill. You could see Slayer, you know, with some good support bands. But in Britain, it was not like that. It would be all mixed up with crap bands along with, you know, a brilliant band. And it was the same in Belfast. And it was kind of agonizing, because then what you'd try to do is go late. But if you go late in Belfast, then you're at the back of the hall.
Well,
And since it's always raining in Belfast, you can't go late, because then you're going to be soaking wet. You know, you want to get in out of the rain, and that means going in early, you know. And then if you go in early, it's nice because you get up front, right? But if you get up front, then you're watching 5 shit bands and you can't move. So, oh man, I tell you.
well, I can see this sort of happening in Sweden now, because it's about quotations. You know, in the metal scene, for example, it's the majority men often playing the music, and they get like a cultural support in form of money, you know. But if you don't have a woman on stage or a transgender or anything, the you know the arrangers of the festivals and so will get a really hard time, and the tickets will be very high. So this has been really a struggle for. We had a festival here in the town where I live called House of Metal, which is I go to that like every year. But now the tickets has been rising, and it's big problems around it because of quotations within the artist scene. And I think it's only like private heroes, I would almost call that, is really making it possible to even have a platform for bands to play on these days. So
Yeah.
it's
And
really hard.
the promoters don't like metal. They never have, and they never will. So anything that they can find to mess it up, you know, now there are exceptions, but generally, although they might want to always ride the train, the gravy train, when they see that that kind of music is back, yeah, sure, then you'll get them doing this and that to make themselves wealthy. But that doesn't mean that they give one shit about the music. And metal has always been the underground music. It's always been the underdog music. And it never really had its day. People have a false impression. Yeah, shit metal had its day, because of Hollywood and because of crap videos. But such excellent bands who just blow your mind, never really was able to get the promotion that they deserve.
Yeah, exactly.
It's always been an underground music. That's what attracted me to it. Still does. I think that there's even some bands that are into, alien visitation, genetic manipulation.
Yeah,
They
Peter
sing up. Yep.
Tätgren, Pain artist there from Sweden. He made a collaboration with the Rammstein guy there. But as soon as he made a song about like the medical industry situation, he had to go his own way. I sort of got that impression. But there are real heroes in this music scene
You
when it
bet.
comes to
You bet.
metal. I mean,
Oh,
Pain, Hypocrisy is the band. Is really really good. I can recommend.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I can. But
There's bands who've sung about Illuminati at great risk to themselves. And so yeah, that's the kind of stuff I like. Hey, Jocke, I'm gonna have to get going
yeah,
soon,
yeah. I
but
was telling you that we should round off here, but this was really interesting. We get only scratching the surface, really don't get into stuff. But I would like to, just to see who you are as a person, also, Michael, because you're always this big canon of just information and knowledge, and I thought it was
yeah,
nice to scratch the surface a little
you
bit on
bet,
you.
mate.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially on your show, I'd like that, and we can do a part two anytime.
Yeah, that would be nice. So we could maybe. I wanted to talk a little about the draconians. Maybe it's a heavy subject, but yeah, I want to get your take on that for later on. Maybe we will see where
Yeah.
we end up.
Yep.
Okay, thank you for taking the time, Michael. This is
No,
pleasure.
no, you appreciate it, man. Have a good one. Thanks so
Okay,
much.
thank you.